There's a reason why Scream and Team sound so similar. Also Cream, but don't worry about that. Whether you're ghost hunting, cult banishing, or just accidentally setting your friends on fire, these multiplayer horror games prove that fear is better when you can make a funny story out of it with your mates. Remember to smash like and sub. Marine. As long as you can get past the 2D-ness of it, Barotrauma will give you the claustrophobia of deep-sea exploration that swiftly turns into full-scale panic. With friends. Set aboard a rickety submarine drifting through Jupiter's frozen moon, players take on roles like engineer, medic, or security officer, each responsible for keeping the tin can running or sabotaging it from within. It's a simulator and workplace meltdown that's also a bit of a cosmic horror, so it's like working at McDonald's past 9 PM. Everything that can go wrong will. You'll get hull breaches, reactor meltdowns, alien leeches chewing through the walls, and your captain screaming, "Who opened the ballast?" as the sub plummets into the abyss. The mix of manual systems and player-driven chaos means no two missions ever go the same way. You'll either become a tight-knit crew or devolve into panic-fueled mistrust in minutes. It's grim, messy, and brilliantly tense. Few co-op games capture the feeling of being trapped together quite as well as Barotrauma does. After nearly a decade of development limbo, Dead Island 2 finally launched back to life, and somehow it's actually fun. Dumb fun like those little skateboards for your fingers, but still fun. Set in a gloriously sun-bleached, gore-soaked Los Angeles, you play as a slayer, carving through the infected masses with melee weapons that crunch, splatter, and dismember in gloriously detailed fashion thanks to the game's flesh system. It's not subtle or very deep at all, but it doesn't need to be. Combat is chunky, fast, and packed with environmental tricks. You can shove zombies into electrified pools, ignite leaking fuel, or carve through them with improvised garden tools. A new skill card system replaces traditional skill trees, letting you swap and stack abilities on the fly, and it's way funner than it sounds. Co-op supports up to 3 players, turning the city into a chaotic playground of limbs and loot. The writing veers towards self-aware stupidity, and it is shallow, sure, but sometimes you just want to chop zombies up with pals. Better the devil you know, and all that. Demonologist is a slicker, some might argue smoother alternative to Phasmophobia, built around the same idea. You and your mates investigate haunted locations, identify what's tormenting them, and try not to scream when your name gets whispered through your headset. The big difference is that this one goes for full-blown gothic horror. Mansions are creaky, candles are flickery, and the ghosts are kinda arseholes from the get-go. It's built in Unreal Engine 5, which gives it dynamic lighting, detailed interiors, and ghost models that are high fidelity. Each player takes specialised tools to detect EMF signals, temperature drops, or spectral voices, and the spirits respond to real voice commands, often in ways that feel a bit too responsive. The co-op play works best when you're methodical, but it's just as entertaining when everything goes wrong. It's a stylish, genuinely creepy paranormal sim that proves this formula still has life and death left in it. Devour is the kind of co-op horror that thrives on hooting and hollering. You and up to 3 other players take on the role of cult members trying to banish a demon, usually by collecting cursed objects scattered around a map while being hunted by whatever you accidentally summoned. It's a pretty familiar premise told in an interesting way, and the tension it builds is nasty and effective. Every stage has its own twist, from rural farmhouses to burning inns, each with new hazards and a different possessed antagonist. Progress is a balancing act between gathering items and managing your own fear as the demon grows more aggressive the closer you get to success. There is a lot of sprinting, panicking, and blaming your mates when it all goes wrong. It's been around for about 4 years now, and while its player base will never threaten Dead by Daylight, it's still well worth checking out, even if you have 0 patience. Set in the decaying corridors of a quarantined research station, Emissary Zero traps players in a nightmare of malfunctioning machinery and alien corruption. It's a co-op survival horror where a small crew must keep the lights on, repair systems, and complete objectives while something inhuman stalks the halls. You'll spend most of your time creeping through dim corridors, solving puzzles, fixing generators, or arguing over who has to check the vents. It's pretty tense when you realise your motion track is going off, but no one else can see anything. It's a little less loud than other friend slop games, if that's a genre you want to call it, and it's one you can complete in a weekend without feeling like you have to grind it out for the rest of your time together. It's also pretty cheap, so your mate who keeps coming up with excuses, oh, I've got to wash my cat, he has none this time. GTFO is pure misery, and that's why you gotta try it. It's a 4-player co-op horror shooter that demands coordination, patience, and probably a member of your friend's group who doesn't mind taking the blame for everything. You play as prisoners sent into a vast underground complex to retrieve objects for an unseen overseer fighting off hordes of mutated creatures lurking in the dark. Every mission feels like you're pretty much part of the Suicide Squad. Your resources are limited, mistakes are punished instantly, and communication is everything. Before the mayhem starts, there's a tense stealth phase where you crouch in pitch black corridors and sync melee attacks to silently kill sleeping monsters. When things go loud, and they will, it becomes a desperate scramble to defend makeshift choke points, ration ammo, and pray your sentry turret holds out. GTFO is brutal, unwelcoming, and incredibly rewarding if your group survives long enough to enjoy it. Emphasis on if. Let's GTNE. Get to the next entry. Hunt Showdown 1896 marked a major overhaul of Crytek's cult PvPvE horror shooter, shifting the action to the mountains of Colorado with a new map, target, and a shiny CryEngine upgrade. The core PvPvE loop remains pretty damn good though. You track a monster, kill it, banish it, and survive long enough to extract while every other team on the server hunts you for your bounty. 1896 introduced the Hellborn, which is a grotesque new wild target, alongside revamped weapons, new hunter cosmetics, and a sharper, moodier atmosphere. The lighting, audio, and environmental detail have all been rebuilt from the ground up, giving each encounter a heavier, grimier weight. Some veterans grumbled about UI tweaks and balance changes, but the result still has that thick, gothic horror vibe. If you and your mates don't mind 10 minutes of nothing happening until suddenly everything happens and oops, you're dead, it is quite the multiplayer horror. Lethal Company turns workplace horror into a workplace comedy. Imagine workaholics with tentacles and you're on the right track. You're part of a scavenging crew hired by a nameless corporation to raid abandoned moons for scrap, but just don't ask why everything's growling at you in the dark. Each shift is a delicate mix of greed and survival. You gotta grab as much loot as you can before the quote is due, or die trying while your friends scream into proximity chat as you slowly descend in quicksand. One player reads radar from the ship while the rest stumble through factories full of monsters, traps, and doors that somehow never open fast enough. When things go wrong, and they always do, it's almost never a bad thing, because it's just so much fun. Lethal Weapon has already become a co-op staple, so if it sounds like it might ring your bell, you've got one of the silliest horror games ever to look forward to. And that's all without mods. Imagine if Ghostbusters and Prop Hunt had a baby. That ectoplasmic baby, with a knife, would be Midnight Ghost Hunt. 4 hunters armed with proton-style gadgets face off against 4 ghosts who can possess almost anything in the environment. For the first half of each match, it's a frantic game of hide and seek. Basically, ghosts hide inside furniture or random clutter, while hunters blast every chair, vase, and mannequin in sight. Then, midnight strikes, and the ghosts turn the tables, becoming supercharged and hunting the hunters instead. It's fast and funny, and always fun to heebie your mate's jeebies. Each map is packed with interactable props, environmental traps, and sneaky hiding spots that make every round kind of unpredictable. The polish and balance have taken time to settle, and it never quite hit mainstream popularity, but it's still a brilliant slice of multiplayer horror fun that you and your friends should snag on the next sale. I bait you can't guess the next game. You know, because Kathy Bates in that movie? Whatever. Misery is a co-op survival game for 1 to 5 players, and it's set in a post-nuclear disaster zone. You play as PMC contractors guarding a secret research institute in the exclusion zone of Zaslavi. Then, with the siren wailing overhead, you've got 60 seconds to grab what you can and dive into raids. In each raid, you'll scavenge procedurally generated zones, military bases, research stations, irradiated city ruins and so on, fighting radiation anomalies, mutants, and hostile survivors. Back at your bunker, you build it room by room, with generators, craft stations, even a basement bar where you can trade loot and unwind. If you enjoyed the open world loot and survive loop of Project Zomboid or the eerie atmosphere of Stalker, Misery gives you both, along with a lovely modern retro aesthetic that just adds to the grime of it all. Remember, Misery loves company. Listen, you cannot deny that nuclear stuff is pretty hot right now. Nuclear Nightmare blends industrial horror with co-op survival, setting players loose in a Soviet-era facility after a meltdown has warped both the landscape and whatever's left inside. Teams are tasked with scavenging vital materials and restoring power while dealing with radiation zones, failing machinery, and things that clearly aren't very human anymore. What makes it stand out is how the environment itself feels like the enemy. Your Geiger counter constantly ticks, oxygen runs low, and flickering lights reveal creatures just long enough to regret seeing them. Players can split roles, with one monitoring reactor pressure, another managing containment valves and so on, but coordination breaks down fast when the alarms start blaring. If you like the look of Stalker, Barotrauma, or even Misery, this scratches the same cold, radioactive itch. By now, Phasmophobia is basically the gold standard for ghost hunting horror, so much so that I worried it might be kind of boring to put here. You and up to 3 others take contracts to investigate haunted houses, schools, and derelict prisons, armed with half-working gadgets and too much optimism. You build evidence in order to try and figure out what the ghosty actually is, but it's the way the ghosts react to your actual voice that makes it feel alive. Say the wrong thing and it might answer, or worse, appear like an evil Joe Hendry. The pacing is brilliant. You will have long stretches of silence broken by light bulbs bursting, doors creaking, and that horrible rasp as a hunt begins. It's packed with pretty great jump scares, some just from you sneakily flicking the light switch to annoy your mates. Copy it. Oh, there's something on the wall.
Where?
Where you're pointing. Right, carry on.
Oh, was it? You're like, there's green dots!
Whoa, it's a rave demon! No! But the tension gets so high that sometimes you won't even want to leave your van. The deeper you go, the less you trust anything, including your friends. Even years on, Phasmophobia remains the best proof that fear just needs bad lighting, unpredictable AI, and sometimes quite rude ghosts. Here's the elevator pitch for this one. Lethal Company meets Adult Swim. Does that do it for you? REPO drops a crew of debt-collecting contractors into a rotting, otherworldly city to retrieve assets. That usually means dragging some cursed object or half-alive entity back to the van without dying in the process. It's a mix of scavenging, stealth, and total panic, where every run plays out like a corporate horror ritual gone wrong, but at least you look kinda silly. Each mission generates a new layout filled with traps, anomalies, and half-lit corridors that feel pulled straight from a feverish office nightmare. You can grab tools to detect movement, pry open locked doors, or calm certain creatures, but most of your time is spent arguing over whether to press on or bail with what little you found. REPO is a bit of an overexposed content machine, true, but anything that appears in Fortnite has to be pretty good. Right? Sker Ritual reimagines Made of Scare's eerie folklore setting as a full-blown co-op shooter, which is even weirder when you consider that it's Welsh. Not many Glocks in Merthyr Tydfil. You and up to 3 others fight waves of masked cultists and supernatural horrors across the decaying Sker Hotel and surrounding countryside, using steampunk-style weapon mods and special abilities called miracles. It's a massive tonal shift from the original slow burn stealth, but it's actually not bad at all. Each one mixes fast-paced shooting with light objectives, all while an increasingly unhinged preacher shouts through old radio broadcasts. The progression system is simple but satisfying as you earn upgrades between rounds to tweak your loadout and unlock new cosmetics. It does have a few rough edges, sure, but if you want Call of Duty Zombies by way of Welsh folklore and a BBC Two late night drama you forgot about, you might have some fun here anyway. Sons of the Forest builds on The Forest's bleak survival-ish horror with a surprising amount of family dysfunction. You and your crew crash on an island crawling with mutants and cultists, then promptly decide you're the world's worst household. One person's hoarding logs, another's antagonising the locals, and your AI companion Calvin is dismantling the base because you worded a command badly. It can be scary at times, but Sons of the Forest will just feel like a strange sitcom for most of your time with it. Ignore all the random limbs stuck on stuff, it's just they're goofy. They're so goofy. The crafting and base building are impressively detailed, but what really sells it is how alive everything feels. Enemies adapt and your group dynamic slowly unravels as boredom sets in as you cut down your millionth tree. You start out as survivors but end up as a weird codependent family that communicates mostly through screeching. It's grim, hilarious and pretty replayable, but the first game does still hold up pretty well too. The Blackout Club captures the perfect suburban nightmare. No, not the Homeowners Association. America, why do you have that? But a bunch of teenagers investigating why everyone in town keeps sleepwalking into the woods. It's a first-person co-op stealth horror where you and your friends sneak through backyards, cul-de-sacs and underground tunnels armed with nothing but smartphones, noisemakers and bad ideas. The monsters are adults under some kind of mind control and they're led by a presence you can only see when your eyes are closed. The mix of stealth, traps and improvisation gives every mission a scrappy DIY feel, like Stranger Things meets Home Alone. Even better, it has a weirdly personal online element. The game occasionally sends players eerie, customized messages from its god, blurring the lines between in-game and real-world communication. It's creepy, clever, and totally unique, which also unfortunately means it was nowhere near as popular as it might have been. It's still a fun time if you can get it on the cheap though. The Outlast Trials takes the series' trademark sadism and makes it social, but at least there aren't any algorithms. You and up to 3 other unwilling test subjects are trapped in Murkoff's Cold War-era facility, forced to complete psychological trials that involve being hunted, tortured, and humiliated for research purposes. Fun! It's grim, stealthy, and absolutely relentless, but somehow funny when you're suffering through it with friends. Each trial throws you into different hell. You will be, of course, sabotaging generators while evading lunatics, rescuing patients who really shouldn't be saved, or creeping through gas-choked chambers as alarms blare. Stealth is essential, but teamwork is the only thing keeping you from total collapse. You can revive each other, share items, or just hide in the same locker and panic together. It's still Outlast, genitals and all, just now with a group therapy session attached. Can't promise those genitals will stay attached though. The Quarry is Supermassive's most interesting stab at the teen slasher formula. Originally planned for the Stadia, the biggest horror of them all, it's a cinematic horror game that plays out like an interactive movie, complete with branching dialogue, quick-time nonsense, and a cast full of familiar faces doing their best to survive the night. You've got David Arquette, Ariel Winter, and Justice Smith, and you've also got Lance Henriksen chewing through every line like it's his last meal. It's decent on its own, but the co-op is where it's really fun. In local couch play, everyone controls a different character, and online session decisions are shared, and arguments are guaranteed. It's all about judgment, where a bad instinct can get half the cast mauled before dawn. For that reason, sometimes it's also about just picking the funniest option. The pacing does drag in spots, but the presentation is top notch, the writing's silverware, and it nails that late 90s horror tone better than most films that inspired it. Vane is a post-apocalyptic, open-world multiplayer survival sandbox where the world's gone to hell, most people are dead, and the rest are trying not to get eaten. Sounds fun, right? You spawn in with basically nothing and have to loot houses, explore abandoned buildings, fight zombies and bandits, and slowly build a base, either solo or with mates. The pitch is literally gather supplies, defend your home, rebuild society. The good bit is that the world actually changes. Time passes, seasons shift, and long events roll through the map, so it never stays comfortable for long. You can fortify a spot, craft gear, run missions together, and defend it when hordes or raiders show up. Co-op is drop in, but progress/saving is still being tuned while it's in early access, so hosting matters. So yeah, calling this Project Zomboid in first person is pretty fair, just with a 3D modern Steam survival flavour. Also go play Project Zomboid, I just didn't want to gab about it for another entry for like the 20th time. Also, it's not got multiplayer in Build 42 yet. That's stinky. World War Z, or Z if you like marmalade, takes the spirit of Left 4 Dead and scales it up until it's actually just kind of dumb. You and 3 mates travel between cities like New York, Moscow and Tokyo, mowing through oceans of sprinting undead that climb, swarm and collapse in sickening piles. It's third person, faster paced and built around being as big as possible. You'll hold a bridge for 2 minutes and kill a literal 1,000 zombies in the process. Each class brings different gadgets and perks, from medics with stim pistols to gunslingers. It's loud and crunchy and very rarely boring. Later updates added crossplay and horde modes, turning it into a surprisingly deep co-op package. But the overall game is not deep at all, and that's brilliant. This feels like the kind of game an adult cartoon would parody in just how video gamey it is, but it's also just a brilliantly fun multiplayer horror to kick back with for a weekend. And we hope you enjoyed kicking back with us for 20 minutes while we looked at some cool multiplayer horror games. What did you enjoy playing with your mates recently? What should we have included here? Should we have included Dead by Daylight? It's just so obvious and so boring now. Anyway, I've been Jimmy. Thanks for watching. Catch you in the next one.